Okay, welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting for uh, October the 6th. Alicia Fawcett will be the vice chair this evening in place of Brick Simmons, who is absent. Alicia, if you could just introduce the Planning and Zoning Board for us, please. Alicia, you're on mute.
Sure. We have with us tonight Brandon Penman from District 1. Brandon, are you present?
Aye, present.
Okay. We also have Rob Thomas from District 3.
Present.
Okay. We have Teresa Knowles from District 4.
Present.
And we have with us Frank Payne, Commission Chair appointed at large.
Present.
And we have our school system representative as well, Kirk Nicholson.
Present.
All members are present and accounted for. And at this time, we would turn it over to Madam Chairman to introduce the Board of Commissioners.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Fawcett. Thank you so much. Board of Commissioners, I will call it when I call your name. Please acknowledge your presence. District 1 Commissioner Henry Mitchell III.
Present.
District 2 Commissioner Kelly Robinson.
Present.
District 3 Commissioner Terenia Carthen.
Present.
District 4 Commissioner Ann Jones-Guider. Okay, and she's not here, so and I'm quite sure we made a note of that. And then Chairman Dr. Ramona Jackson Jones present. We have 4 members present tonight, and I yield back to you, Vice Chair Fawcett.
And at this time, we'll turn the meeting over to staff for our presentation tonight.
Thank you, Vice Chair Fawcett. I wanted to acknowledge staff. Kim Waters, our Planning and Zoning Secretary. Johanna Womack is our Planning and Zoning Clerk. Allison Duncan is our Senior Planner. Phil Schaefer is our Zoning Administrator. I acknowledge Miguel Valentin, Kim Bernard, and also James Worthington as being present for the meeting. So tonight is, there's no cases tonight. This is actually a discussion on the Unified Development Code and updates and results of an audit. I want to frame this discussion, if I may, take a moment, just so we have the context of what we'll be doing this evening. In January of 2018, I began working for the county. At that time, I was invited to be a stakeholder in the city of Douglasville as they developed their Unified Development Ordinance. That was they did not have any kind of code or anything that was anything like what we have. If you've never seen our Unified Development Code, it's about 4 inches thick, and I'm not kidding. And it had not been updated since 2004. So I was a stakeholder on that, representing the county. It was also about that time that the Atlanta Regional Commission came out with a Community Development Assistance Program, which is called CDAP. We applied for, and with permission of the Board of Commissioners, I was able to use some money that was in my budget for 2018 and reallocate it for a match so that we could get the Atlanta Regional Commission to do an audit on our Unified Development Code. So it was very fortuitous for the county that the project manager at that time was Allison Duncan, who is now on staff. And even doubly fortuitous that Phil Schaefer joined the city somewhere in that process and is now working at the county. That said, we have a lot of time into this, a lot of sticky notes, a lot of things have come up. Why can't we do this? Citizens have come in. Where can we do this? How come, well, our code didn't allow it, or we didn't have it, or there were discrepancies. So a lot of things needed to be changed, needed to be looked at. So we entered into a year-long process with the Atlanta Regional Commission, and they sent us their report. I think it was, I want to say the end of August, 1st of September. And Mr. Schaefer, who will be walking you through a lot of the changes tonight, has been doing the lion's share of trying to incorporate that information into a document that we feel is going to be very advantageous for developers, very advantageous for the citizens, and easier easier read, a better cleaner version of our code. I want to state also that we've already uploaded the code changes to the Planning and Zoning website today. Allison was able to do that in PDF form. We are committed to also getting you hard copy binders of everything that you'll be seeing tonight, and so you'll have that. We're going to ask at the end of this that at the end of the presentation that the information be tabled until December, so that we have some time to work with and answer any questions that anyone would have. We're also going to be recording this. TJ's recording this to put on the Douglas County Happenings. And we're also going to post a link to the recording, hopefully on the website if we can. So that lays down kind of like the groundwork of where we're at. We're also taking comments from citizens that are interested or in the changes that they see to email planning@co.douglas.ga.us. And we wanted to go ahead and get into the actual presentation, but I wanted to see first and ask if there were any citizens that were on the line that wanted to comment. If so, then we would want to do a public hearing on it at this time. I don't know if there are. I anticipate that the public hearing would take place in December when we actually adopt all the changes that we're moving towards. But let me see and just check
Hey,
and see if
Ron.
there is anybody out there.
Ron, has this been advertised as a public hearing?
It has.
Okay, well, we ought to open it up for a public hearing, whether anybody wants to talk or not, and then
Okay.
close it or table it, or we can continue the public hearing to the next time if you need to, but you
Sure.
need to open it up tonight if that's what was advertised.
Okay, Alicia, then would you please open for the public hearing for the changes to the Unified Development Code?
At this time, we're opening the public hearing for changes to the Unified Development Code. If there are any parties that want to speak on behalf of the changes, please state your name.
Madam Vice Chair,
Yes.
if nobody determines that they don't want to talk tonight, and it's Ron's contemplation that this will be continued over to a public hearing also in December. Ron, is that my understanding?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
You may want to just let the public hearing, don't close the public hearing and let it ride until to be continued at the December meeting and announce the date and time of that.
Okay. Thank you, Ken, for that. What is the date? What is the date of that, Johanna? Did we post that? We posted the special call meeting in December?
No, it hasn't been posted yet. It'll be the first Tuesday, so the 6th, I want to say.
So December 6th? Okay.
Quick correction, I think December 1st is actually the first Tuesday. Just want to double check and make sure we have that clear for the record.
Okay, thank you, Allison. So December 1st would be the date for the meeting then. Okay, so we're going to leave it open public hearing until December 1st. Is that correct, Ken?
Yeah, Ron, I think that's correct, unless there's something else that Phil says in the UDC that requires it to be two separate public hearings. I'm not aware of that. I think UDC changes, you typically announce what the changes are, have a public hearing, close it and vote. So if it's your contemplation, it would be continued over into the December meeting. I would leave the public hearing in recess until that time and continue the meeting to do the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So at this time, then, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and roll.
Point of order.
Yes.
This is more of a point of order. Can we go ahead and allow her to also ask the question, anybody against, just for the record, so you have both sides, just to be.
Yes, Commissioner.
And then you can swing it over to just a suggestion.
Sure.
Is there anyone present on the call who is against the proposed changes to the Unified Development Code?
Hearing none.
Hearing none, we move that the public hearing be in recess until December 1st, 2020 at 6:00 p.m.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Now, what I'd like to do is introduce Phil Schaefer. We actually have put together a PowerPoint presentation of the suggested changes. Again, these are changes from internal staff, from citizens that we've gathered over the past year and a half, and it's also the work product of the Atlanta Regional Commission, who we had the Community Development Assistance Program grant with. So Phil has done the lion's share of morphing and mixing this information together into our current code to clean it up and make it better. And I'm going to turn it over to Phil so he can walk us through these suggested changes.
Good evening. Thanks, Ron. Phil Schaefer, zoning administrator. So the changes that we've got coming to the code, I wanted to start first on the county's website so everybody can see where we're at. Celebrate Douglas County. You can go to the Planning and Zoning Department, and on the left-hand side, you'll see the list of choices. One of those choices is Unified Development Code. When you click on that, it takes you to this landing page where the existing Unified Development Code sits, as well as here's the proposed changes. When you click on one of these, what you will get is what we've changed, proposed for changing is underlined or struck out. When we go through the code a little later, I'll explain what we're going to do in terms of how we replace the code. But these are the additions to Article 1. I'm not going to read them or try to belabor all the great detail that goes into this, other than to say we'll visit with this again. But I just wanted everybody to see that you can go to the website right now. It's live, and you can, in fact, invoke all of these components that we're proposing for change, and you'll see the actual changes. Having said that, I'm going to share my presentation slides with you so that we can get this up and running. As Ron mentioned, we had a serious evaluation of the code even before the Atlanta Regional Commission folks joined us as consultants. We had been talking for months about how to update the code. So when he says sticky notes, he's not joking. I had literally a 3-ring binder full of sticky notes that people had made suggestions and tried to figure out, well, how can we do this a little differently, or how does somebody else do it? And combining all of those sticky notes into actual suggestions for the ARC folks to look at and make evaluations. Our code hasn't been updated in significant quantity since 2004. And since that time, a number of amendments have been made. Some are better than others, and some blend in better than others. But the reality is those are mostly Band-Aids. And what the code desperately needs is a revamping and an upgrade. So after we got our information back, I think it was actually September 10th, we got the final report back from the ARC review and assessment. They appraised the code. They gave us a number of suggestions based on our combined efforts at giving them what we have been suffering with and what the public has suffered with, along with reviewing the existing plans and studies that the county has spent a lot of money and effort at completing over the last several years. And putting all of that together is what is the result we see in their review and audit. Most important, modernize and make this thing user-friendly. There's a structure to this that is almost Byzantine in terms of how you have to use it. You have to actually know that when you want to explore a type of use, the requirements that you're up against are going to be located in 3 or 4 different segments of the code. And it's not always clear to even a seasoned user how to address the fact that if you just want to know what to do, you have to go through all of these different sections. And even then you still get surprised. So updating graphics, modifying tables, and putting the information in one place and creating a more user-friendly version of the code is one of the highest priorities we had all along, and expressed that to our folks at ARC when they did the review. So they've come back and they've simply reiterated, you've got to change the structure and you've got to improve it. One of the things that we noticed in terms of how to improve it is some of the missing elements. And missing elements would be just plain English explanations of why in the world you actually have a particular district. So an all-purpose statement for an individual zone district would be something that we didn't have before. Now you have it. It just says plainly, well, this is a residential district, and it involves single family. It might involve duplex, but it's a single family district, and here's what you have to do to build in it. Here's what you have to do to develop in it. The appropriate changes are going to cover all the different articles eventually. But right now, we are going to focus on how do we encourage higher quality development in the county? And that involves the standards. So improving the standards and improving the ability for a person to understand the standards is critical. Other issue that arose is how do we improve housing diversity and affordability? And part of that revolved around this Byzantine structure. If we could consolidate residential standards and residential development into a few zone districts rather than the numerous districts we have, that would help. Also, how do we view accessory dwelling units on a piece of property? We allow them by special use permit right now, but how do we define this better so that people who wish to do this have a set of regulations that are a little bit more friendly, still requiring them to meet certain standards, but a little friendlier to interact with? And then how do we make the code a little more affordable when you are actually trying to build something on an individual lot? Some of the more detailed recommendations, obviously, were how do we modernize and make it user-friendly, encourage quality development. So let's take a look at modernize and making it user-friendly. The first thing that we all realized, and I think everyone on the call, if you look at our code, immediately realizes there are no graphics to speak of that are user-friendly. So one of the things that we did was we created some more user-friendly versions of how you would look at the different graphics and tables of information identified for each zone district. That on its own really does facilitate use of the code by putting all of the standards into an individual table, allowing people to go to one place and look up that particular set of development requirements makes it much easier to use. Then recreating the use tables, and I'm going to show you all of these things in a minute in detail as they sit now on our website so you can see what actually pulls up. This is just a snapshot of what we were suggesting. You make the user tables a little more friendly, take those graphic boxes out and actually use letters to identify whether it's a special use permit or it's a restricted use or it requires additional development standards be met. That was one of the things they did recommend. It's a little hard to read right now between the dark squares and the dark circles. I think everybody's kind of familiar with the table. If you're not, I'll show it to you in a minute. Then a couple of the other things we found, eliminating definitions or duplicate definitions, and then trying to make sure our definitions were the same as the city's definitions in terms of seamlessness at the boundaries. One of the things I discovered working at the city, then coming over here, is that some of the definitions are actually differently worded, and that causes problems at the edge. So we took all of our definitions, compared them to the city's definitions, and we rotated around our definition a little bit so that it matched what the city was in terms of making it a more seamless effect at the edge. And then people would be able to work between the two codes a little bit more easily. In terms of how this affects us at the edge, it at least allows us a seamless definition of the various uses as well as the standards at the edge. The other issue was taking all of the terms that are defined in all the different articles that we're changing and moving them to one place rather than having them sprinkled around the entire code so that you have to look up each article of the code if you're looking for a particular word. We put them all in one Article 15. So that is the rule. It applies to all definitions except the sign definitions, which I'll get into when we get to the sign ordinance, and I'll explain the why in a minute. In terms of updating the reference, one of the other issues that we've run into over the time is that there's an inconsistent set of references between, say, jurisdictions. We're calling WSA in one part, Water Sewer Authority in another, Douglasville, Water and Sewer Authority in another. The recommendation was to try and get those references more consistent so that we all look at the code, we understand exactly who we're talking about. And then updating external regulations was kind of important right now because we have a couple of things that were brought to us from our engineering section regarding floodplains. That's why you'll see Chapter 11 being modified. There's some definitions and there's some date references that needed to be corrected in order to comply with federal law. And so that's what we've done also. And then as far as updating references, there's also a uniform system for describing each zoning classification. And the most important part, which you will probably not see in terms of how it affects an individual person, is the NAICS codes for the various land uses. This is the North American Industrial Classification System. It was created by the United States, Canada, and the Mexico governments in order to have a uniform definition of every major land use that we involve in our code. It was developed for university studies so that it creates a uniform definition of everything we do in terms of land uses. That needed to be updated to 2017. There were quite a few references that are older. Some of them are to the old SIC codes, so those were updated. In addition, we have updated some revisions to sections that are fairly hefty revisions. The heavy truck parking, which you all have seen several times now in the last year, requests for parking facilities for heavy trucks and trailers. In addition, short-term rentals has been updated in order to understand and quantify exactly how you would have to do that. Sign regulations updated. We're pretty good on telecommunications. There were some very minor recommendations from them, but as far as timeframes are concerned, we are faster than most jurisdictions at reviewing modifications to telecommunication towers. That's been their hang-up for a number of years in other jurisdictions. We also needed to take a look at group living, the definition of family, and how group living situations are covered. Nonconformance was also updated. We are not going to deal with subdivision or the administration approvals right tonight for the latter portions of the code. That's going to come next year. That's a much more complicated fix and needs a lot more fine tuning. So we aren't going to deal with that this evening and in December. Part of what we've gone through, though, I want to jump over here and show you. So truck parking, we've created a section in 302, which is, I'll show it to you in a minute, but just so for general purposes, that's accessory uses. Section 331 is the section that deals with truck stops, specifically that offer truck stops, fueling facilities as a principal use. 302, we're talking about truck stops as an accessory use, so that all of you understand. I'll show it to you in a sec, but it deals with 302. Are you allowed to park trucks if you own a fleet of trucks in a light industrial, heavy industrial, or heavy commercial district? Right now, it is unclear if you can do it in a light industrial. We've been doing it as special use permits to cover that, but it's going to be recodified so that it is clear if you own a business in a light industrial, heavy industrial, or heavy commercial district, you have the right to park trucks as your fleet vehicles on your property, and that does not require a special use permit. However, in 331, if you would like to have a truck parking facility as a principal use, then you are going to be required to rezone into the proper zone category and get a special use permit so that we can hear and see precisely what it is you want to do. And that's one of the main changes to that. So it's parsed out into the correct deals. And then in short-term rentals, it says 347. I've put short-term rentals into an overall category that used to be the section on what we would call bed and breakfasts and country inns. And I've borrowed that section to accumulate all of the hotel motel, all of the short-term rental, all of the transient tourist type rental facilities, and combined it into one so that all the parts that you would address, not just as short-term rentals, but all of those tourist-related entities would be under one section of the code, and then created the rules and requirements around it, as you see. The sign regulations really suffered. They did not have very many graphics of a usable version, so we've added quite a few graphics into that section of the code, updated the tables within that part of the code. We've done this and left the definitions within that part of the code. Now, I'll explain that again in a minute. Telecommunications, we've adjusted some of how we do things, and there's some references in there that need to be updated, but that part is fine as far as how fast we actually review things. So our modified process is actually pretty good. Article 1 is the section that deals with applicability and nonconforming status. There's a couple of significant additions that we'd like to make into Article 1. And then I've taken all of the definitions that used to be in Article 1 and put them in Article 15. Article 1, and I'm going to show it to you in a sec, has a significant body of information in it that deals with all of the applicability of the code. Let me just go back over here to the actual code so that I can show you what I'm talking about when we deal with this. So in the Unified Development Code, this is again our website. I'm going to get a little more detailed here before we move on in the presentation, because I want you to see some of the issues that we are dealing with. One of the most important parts was taking the interpretation section that used to be in Article 15 and moving it up front so that all of the responsibilities and all of the uses of words and phrases are right at the front end of the code. That gets this out of the way. Who we're talking about and what those officials represent is defined. All of the important definitions and what we actually mean when we say zone, day, map, all of that is in this front end. How we compute time, measuring distance limitations, and then who's in charge, decision-making responsibility. And then there's one piece in here I just want to share quickly with you. Supplementing the code. I wish I could say I was perfect, but I guarantee you that there are still going to be mistakes in even everything I've done and gone through 10 times over trying to make sure. I'm still finding little quirky things. But no matter how hard we try, there's going to be typos, grammatical errors, non-substantive changes that are going to be needing to be made later. And I'm adding this section in so it's very clear that as staff, we would be allowed to make those changes. We don't have to bring that stuff and clutter up the Board of County Commissioners docket with little typos or little references to different sections that are going to crop up as if they are now broken links. So in Article 8, there's a reference back to Article 2 that's broken now because we've modified Article 2. I don't want to clutter up your docket with all those changes that are going to come. When we have substantive changes, we will bring them before the Planning Commission and the Zone and the Board of County Commissioners. But for little things, this clarifies how we're allowed to do that. And then there's another piece in here I want to share quickly with you, which is the governmental exemption effect on the Unified Development Code. I want to read this one to you because this one's critical. This development code applies to all lands and all the building structures and uses thereon within the unincorporated areas of Douglas County, Georgia. All those lands have been properly zoned according to above section 102B. The Douglas County Commissioners acknowledge the precepts of governmental exemption and sovereign immunity granted the county itself and other governmental or semi-public entities with those certain immunities providing the option to develop property without regard to the standards and restrictions of this development code when said development is within the purview of their respective governmental purpose. However, it shall be the express requirement of the Douglas County Commissioners that, absent a specific legislative conferral of immunity on said other governmental and semi-public entities, all property owned or proposed for development by semi-public or governmental entities should be developed according to the standards set forth within this development code. And subsequent to that, having been zoned into a public use district, if lands that were public become owned by a non-exempt entity, then those lands must seek approval of a rezoning request through our application process. Or if they were not rezoned into the public process, the public district this time, they would revert back to their original zone district category. For instance, the school board has a school, but it has a next door property that is something else and did not get zoned public. If the school board sells that, or for instance, Greystone would be rezoned into public use and then sells their offices over there and it's a public district, you'd have to rezone that into a commercial district or an industrial district to reuse it as a private entity. That's kind of important. The most important piece, though, is explaining to the various entities in our county that sovereign immunity has been judged both ways by Supreme Courts of a number of states in terms of whether or not an outside government coming into a jurisdiction is required to follow your zoning code. You hope that they would, and you hope it would be amicable. But this is a very precise phraseology. If you are not granted legislatively conferred immunity, then you should develop your property according to our regulations. And that's just an important piece of this puzzle. The other thing that I'm going to ask of you is that we change the non-conforming piece of the code to read, rather than being judged by value, we judge it by size. So that if 50% or more of the gross square footage of something is destroyed, you must rebuild according to current code. If less than 50, say again?
Hey, Phil.
Say, hi.
Yeah, can I ask one question? I don't want to interrupt you. You got a good flow, but on the sovereign immunity, can I ask one question?
Sure, fire away.
For purposes of clarity, your provision is protecting the county when another government comes in and doesn't get a blessing from the Board of Commissioners as to the development of their project on public land. Your provision is not intended for the county to waive its defense of sovereign immunity under any circumstances, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's why I say we recognize our own sovereign immunity as well, that we have been provided certain immunities along with other third-party governmental entities.
Gotcha. I keep rolling. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Oh, yeah. No, that's critical. Thank you, Ken, because that's absolutely critical. We are bumping into that right now. We'll have to go into that at a later date, but we are bumping into that issue of sovereign immunity and what's required of the county within the county and what's required of outside governments in our county. One of the pieces of nonconformities that we don't have right now is registration and recording. So in other jurisdictions I've worked in, we added this particular piece in so that if someone has a piece of ground or a piece of or a land use that was developed prior to the code, if they can document any of that, we should be able to record a certificate of nonconformance that allows that to continue. And that way, if something were to happen, they would have at least a document on file that says, look, this is what we did, this is how we did it, and we should be allowed to continue doing it. And this is one way to bridge that. I know we want to get rid of nonconforming uses and nonconforming structures, but at least this way you have a record of what the nonconformance actually is. And it can continue as long as it's done within the boundaries of the rules for the 50% issue. This pertains mostly to single-family residential stuff anyway, a limited amount of commercial, but mostly this deals with how you preserve a person's right to continue having a home in a certain place when it may not, in fact, be zoned for that. And that's what I wanted to share with the non-conforming is along with the percentage of destruction above which you must develop the property according to current code and below which you could, in fact, allow it to be redeveloped according to its original configuration, and then accepting residences from that rule. So if you own a single family home and it's destroyed 100%, you can build it back according to what was there. And then the other piece of this, let me see where we're going. So yeah, so that's good. So let me come back over here to the presentation and we'll keep moving forward on that. So we had stopped at signs and sign regulations, telecommunications, group living, application of non-conforming. So this is where we stop. Use of land. So here again, we have some suggestions on combining the different zone districts that we have found actually very little interest in. So we're requesting that a CNCC be combined into the CG category and that the CR be combined into the CH. There is one regional commercial property. It's Deer Lick Park for whatever reason. And we just need to understand, I'm not sure why Deer Lick is zoned CR. There's clearly was a reason for it long ago, but the reality is that should probably be public, semi-public, not CR. At any rate, if someone were to develop a CR, you would simply do CH from now on. Someone in the neighborhood commercial and this little commercial CC are going to be developing as CG now. There aren't very many properties in either of these districts, and we will just simply combine them, suggesting combine them into the CG. The other problematic piece of this, and I'm not going to show you the sections of the code because it would blur your eyes if I tried to go through it the way people do, is the combined corridor overlay districts. So we have a number of corridors in the county, and those corridors have all got their own independent sets of rules and sets of uses that are allowed and sets of uses that are prohibited. We're recommending that we redo this into a single highway corridor overlay district that will identify the separate segments of these highways as Highway 92, Highway 5, Highway 78, and the Post Road overlay for independently identifying what's allowed and what's not allowed. I'll show you that in a moment. But this is a way of getting out from under probably 70 pages of extraneous information all spread across a bunch of the code that's very hard for people to find in the first place. And then you have to compare it to the use tables in section 210 to figure out, well, okay, as an example, many of you will remember, we had to update the Highway 92 overlay district for allowing car washes of a high end some months back. Well, you had to look into not just the Highway 92, but you had to review the Section 210 restrictions on car washes and the Section 300 restrictions on car washes before you could figure out exactly how to do that special use permit. At any rate, we're suggesting that we combine it all into one district, allowing the standards to be uniform across the different highway segments, but that the use table is now added into Section 210 as another table to allow you to see in every segment what is allowed, what is restricted, and what can be done by special use permit. The other piece of this, combine the RD, RTC, RMF into a single high-density residential district. That solves a number of issues as far as some of the comments that we've heard from the commissioners over the last year about how do we help people develop property in a way that we want it to be developed, as opposed to being hammered by developers who just want to do it their way. And so this gave us some flexibility to create standards and incentives to develop land at a higher quality level rather than just the cookie cutter stuff. And then additionally, combining the OIL and the OI into a single OI, we have no OIH and only a little OIL. And so it made sense to drop off and put one zone district for both of those categories. And then we'll be adding the planned residential district. We've already added the planned unit development, and we like to add a public, semi-public district to put all of our public projects and public ownership interests, all the county's owned properties, all the city's owned properties, all the state's owned properties into that public, semi-public, which mirrors what the city did in their code as well. And that helps a lot in terms of keeping the public on notice that there is a public use intended for this land. And we own a bit of land that is not developed. If you convert that into a public district, at least the neighbors are going to realize, wait a minute, this could become anything. As Ken mentioned, sovereign immunity. This could literally become anything a governmental entity would want in furtherance of its governmental purposes. And a lot of that land right now is just zoned whatever it's zoned, and the neighbors are not going to know that a public entity or semi-public entity could develop it as something else. This is Article 4. We've modified Article 4, which was basically a text article on the development standards. It had tables in it by zone district for all those standards, but not in a usable fashion. And I'm gonna go through this one right here, and I'm gonna let you see what we've done as a snapshot here in the presentation is created a specific table of standards for each of the zone districts, a purpose for each of the zone districts, and then lot development standards are much easier to use. The purpose is clear, and then we've added graphics in so that you can see minimum lot size, minimum lot width, setbacks from the major roads, and building floor areas, and then what it would look like in 3 dimensions. I'm going to jump over here, and I want to show you real quickly what that looks like in real life as far as the code is concerned. So when you come over here, Article 4, Division 1, I'm going to open that up so that you can see. This is the live version now. We have agricultural and residential districts, commercial, mixed use, industrial, overlay, and supplemental development standards. I've got each of these standing on its own so that you can open each of them on their own, so that's not such a big document. Division 5 is the old text. I saved this because there are later articles in the code that refer back to Article 4 for development standards. I did not want to break those links and that would be an aggressive break, so that they did not refer to anything. If I had taken these particular pieces out, then you'd have later sections of the code referring to nothing. And so I've left these in. I've taken their tables out so that when you, for instance, look at minimum lot size established, there's a table in here that showed you by zone district what that is. And what we've done is move that over to here so that the table of uses is now this. And each zone district gets its own table of standards. In addition, each zone district has its own graphics to show you what is meant by each piece, and a 3-dimensional graphic to show you what it might look like for a residence, acreage in farming, a supplemental or accessory garage structure, an accessory agricultural structure, and that way, and fencing and a road. So you get an idea in context what this district looks like. And then the standards are still some text in there. Eventually we will create more table and diminish that amount of text. But for right now, it's easier to have that all placed in one individual article. Residential agriculture, residential or AG, RA, RLD, moving on up the density chain here into RMD. We are proposing to delete the residential duplex as an independent district and allow duplexes to be developed in the MD, medium density single family. So you can either do single family homes or duplexes in this district, and the standards are there for either one, whether you're on sewer, whether you're on septic, and what the setbacks and lot coverage are requirements, what it would look like. That way we can deal with it. And then the supplemental regulations specifically for that, along with if you have more than 50 units, you're going to have to do a traffic study. The residential high density, again, what had been proposed was to incorporate duplex units into this one as well as townhouse condominium, multifamily units, and then maintain these separate categories so a developer could look at this table and say, okay, well, I'm going to be doing townhouses. So Trayton Homes that came before us a month ago, they would be doing townhomes. They would be covered by that set of regulations within that column. And they could look at this table and say, okay, I got it. That's how we develop. And then here's the supplemental regs, the actual, what the development might look like in 3 dimensions, given the density of what each of those tables allows for. And then some supplemental regs are still in there. In terms of manufactured housing, there's still going to be an RMH district because we do have quite a few residential districts zoned for mobile homes and manufactured housing. So we don't want to lose that one and make those non-conforming. So we're going to keep that. And then there's some supplemental regs. And then the planned residential development is the category we're proposing to include to allow for development in a more unique and more flexible way. Let me come back over here. I'm going to show you what Division 2 looks like. That's going to be commercial and mixed use. We have our major graphic here showing all of the dimensional standard definitions. And then planned unit development is the first one that shows up. This is what you all had approved several months back as far as what the standards are and what needs to be submitted. And then office institutional, single district, the graphics and the standards, and then general commercial, and then heavy commercial down here. So those are the different categories for that. And then I just wanted to share one more. The Division 3 is the industrial districts, the main graphic, the standards for light industrial, the standards for heavy industrial. Now let me come back over to the presentation and we'll start that back up again. And that way you get an idea of kind of how we're proposing to change the code. And the subdivision components of this in Article 5 deal with a number of things. So we are proposing to eliminate the categories of mixed-use master planned and master plan developments. Those categories were developed as special use permits in order to allow people to do a quasi PUD when PUD was made illegal. And rather than continue with that special use permit process, it makes more sense to eliminate those. There's a couple of them out there. Allow that to be a legacy development that can continue to grow or develop according to its originally approved conditions, or allow them to come back in and modify that to a regular planned unit development that you would hear and be able to evaluate any new conditions that might be required on the PUD if they convert from a master planned special use permit to an actual planned unit development zone district. So we're taking these special use permit concocted districts off the books now, which is probably a very good idea. Let me pop in here to the sign regulations for a minute. Article 7. One of the issues that came up with signs is, and I'm just showing you a new table that we had to create in order to allow signs in the agricultural zone district. We added some graphics, some visuals, so that when you look at definitions, it's quite clear what's meant by all of this in the sign regulations. For instance, if you have a vehicle with a logo or a company sign on the side of it and you park it a certain way, it's not a sign. You park it so it's absolutely a sign. I wanted people to be able to see clearly what is a violation and what is not. Ground signs. And then as far as dealing with this, let me jump over. I'm going to show you the sign code real quick because we had a question come up in our earlier meeting, and I want to share part of what we're doing. Oops, back to the other one. Let me go back over to share with you this piece here. And I'm going to open up Article 7, signs. One of the things that came up in our earlier meeting is a question of, is any of this fixed? And the answer is, we're presenting this to you tonight because this is a draft. We're asking that any of you who have questions or suggestions look through these sections, and you'll just be another sticky note. Send it over to us, and we'll take a look at what can be changed to accommodate your concerns. So none of this is fixed. I just want to make that very clear. This is just our suggestions. The sign code for the county had some unconstitutional phrases in it that required code enforcement to actually read a sign in order to regulate the sign. That's now forbidden. We are going to regulate signs on the basis of location, size, illumination, physicality, not text, but physicality. And that's really kind of important because the city bumped into that when we changed the city code as well. What is constitutional? And one of the comments that was made earlier was, well, how do we regulate what's in windows, for instance, just so that we get that clear? How do we regulate in terms of the signs that are cluttering up the windows of our stores? And you regulate that by how much of the window is allowed to be covered. But when we get into the issue of the text that is being advertised, we cannot regulate the text. You can regulate the amount of it on the basis of how much of a particular area on a given wall is actually a sign and adds into that signage allowance per facade, but we cannot in fact regulate on the basis of the text itself. That violates the First Amendment to the Constitution. Now, there obviously are rules about vulgarity, and so you have some rules that cover that, but as far as the text being concerned, if we have to read it, then that's going to be a problem, and we don't regulate it that way. But all of these other things, so for instance, signage regulations in terms of, okay, if you wanted to do a changeable copy sign, we can regulate how that sign works. We can regulate how it's animated. We can regulate it whether its light level is too bright. We can regulate whether the transition on those is instantaneous or takes too long so that in fact it's distracting to drivers. We can regulate the physicality of signs, just not the text involved, as long as it doesn't violate the state requirements governing vulgarity. And I just wanted to share that with you. And we've got new tables in here. And I'm kind of rotating through this fairly quickly, but what's permitted by district and what's not allowed. Then also, I wanted just to show you how the definitions, sorry for the roller coaster here, how the definitions have been updated with a little more user-friendly graphics. So you start to look at what is various types of sign, where they're located, how you measure them, under canopy, wall signs, your shop sign. The one I always like down here when we get to the bottom, digital billboards, freestanding signs, and then incidental signs. Of all the signs we deal with, this is probably one category that absolutely causes the most heartburn. How many of these incidental signs are you allowed to have? And is a menu board an incidental sign, or is it a actual sign face? So we have had to define these various components, and I just wanted to make that clear because we get this question all the time as to signage. And then at the back end here, a general figure that depicts all the different signs together, and then a guide to on-premise signs. I need to tweak this a little bit more, but we're working on it. And then how you measure signs. And I just wanted to go through that fairly quickly to show you how we're dealing with that piece of the puzzle, because it's a very complicated piece. In terms of definitions, that has now expanded. We have put all of the definitions into Article 15 by taking them out of the various places they exist now and putting them into Article 15. So it's starting to get pretty lengthy, but it's diminishing in other places and increasing in Article 15. Let's talk about purpose statements. One of the interesting things that we found, some of the purposes of some of these zone districts are really quite antiquated. So there have been some changes to that. In terms of the corridors, again, like I said, we've modified things to have all of them put into a single district. And that would be the Article 4, Division 4 for overlay districts. I think I'm going to show that to you real quick, just because that one's a really good one, so that you can see how the different elements are going to show up. There's two parts to that overlay district. So the overlay corridor has its development standards, which are in Article 4, and then it has its uses allowed in Article 2 as an additional table. Let me show you what that looks like real quick, as Article 2 is really kind of important. I just want to show you Article 2, use of land and structures. Let me see here. So we've added a table 2.5, and I'm going to show you down here. Here's the changes. In order to do this correctly, we have had to update the zoning districts that are allowed, put some other comments in here, but you're going to see underlines and strikeouts as far as what we do for the various districts. Let me get that back up. There we go. So here's Article 2 in terms of the front end of Article 2, which is the various sections of what's allowed. We've created a new table to show you conversion of previous zone districts. This is a question that comes up quite a bit too. Previous zone districts prior to 2004, zone districts from 04 to 2020, and then what we are asking you to adopt this evening is 2020 going forward. This allows people to see, and we get this question quite often, what was the zoning back in the day? And we can go back and translate those zone districts into the current classification, and then updated all of the different sets of purposes for each zone district, their statements of purpose, to reflect the more updated versions of what's going on, added the public and semi-public and the use overlay districts. And we're striking out, and this is the important part, the overlay districts are being eliminated and consolidated, so that you'll see a purpose now. Rather than having all of the development standards stuck in here under Section 208, which is what was there before, we are now having all of this eliminated. And that way we can consolidate. And again, there were a series of definitions, many, many pages of definitions. The they now are going to be over in Article 15. Section 2. All right, let me get up, come back down here and put the presentation back up for this and grab back the presentation. And there we go. So quality growth overlay district, a highway corridor overlay district, the estate overlay district, these are the conservation district. These are all going to be in a single division, Article 4, Division 4 standards now, so that it's all in one place. And we'll get rid of the master plan developments. We'll get rid of the mixed use district as well. You've already adopted the planned unit development category, so we're good there. I wanted to show you one of the reasons. This is the serious justification for why we're asking to consolidate districts. I'm going to show you a couple of slides here that regard commercial districts, the CC, the CG, and the CR. There are 2 parcels zoned CR, 29 total acres, not a very significant amount of land. In addition, the CC and the CN, not very significant amounts of land either. There's a bunch of this that's not developed. It's zoned for CN or for CC, but it has nothing on it right now. So we felt it would be important to consolidate that into a CG district. We had to tweak the development standards just a tiny bit to account for that because we don't want to create non-conformance. But outside of that, small tweak in terms of, and I think it's lot coverage and setbacks that had to be tweaked a couple of feet to allow for it. The issue for commercial, community commercial, and neighborhood commercial is we just aren't getting any requests for that right now. You get no requests over a decade, and the few that were rezoned over the last decade haven't developed. That's time to revisit and eliminate. The same with the CR, which is regional commercial. There just isn't that much there. The same for the office institutional. Here's the number of parcels that are actually OIL versus OIH. There's nothing. And so that's the reasoning behind asking you to go ahead and consolidate those districts. The other issue is, how do we increase housing diversity and affordability? One of the ways is by combining districts into a set of district standards that offer some carrots to developers as well as some slightly different standards. Residential duplex, multifamily, townhouse, and condominium being combined into a residential high density. In terms of this, truthfully, this won't be residential duplex. This is going to be residential triplex, which technically, in the definition, when you start talking about a triplex or a quadplex, that's actually a townhouse. So we'll tweak this a little bit. This is an older presentation, but multifamily and townhouse condominium is what we're trying to get at. How do we help those developers bring us a higher quality of project? How do we allow the commissioners to review projects so that a carrot can be offered instead of the sticks we've always banged them up against with? One of the ways is to try and offer some development standards that allow for a slight increase in density as a bonus for incorporating various additional requirements, like developing these homes as environmentally conscientiously built. So you'll have those homes that are built according to certain certification standards, or they're built to accommodate our transportation hub so that they can have bus stops, or they're developed according to other criteria. Maybe they'll provide solar power, or maybe they'll provide hookups for electric vehicles, or maybe they'll provide various additional amenities for the community above and beyond what we normally ask for now. And that was a piece of the puzzle that we've felt was important. So we've added some of those criteria in to give you some flexibility in your decision making. If someone comes up and says, listen, I want to do a serious high quality project that's earthcraft or that's solar oriented or that's transportation oriented, that allows you to say, you know, that sounds like a good idea. I think you should be allowed to develop slightly increased density bonus for that in exchange. I want to share a couple of the specifics that we've done. 313 alternative dwelling units. That's kind of an important one. And I'm going to change over here back to the actual articles so we can go through a little bit of section 3, restrictions on uses. Again, there's a lot here, and I don't want to, I want to jam so much on you that you actually go cross-eyed, but the reality is there should be some things that get changed in this that allow us some flexibility. And I want to just jump down here to 313, which is accessory uses. There's some modifications ahead of this, but 313 is the one that's kind of critical because this is the one that comes up the most often. Special use permit for a guest house in the backyard, and a special use permit for a guest unit in the property, it's in the house itself. Accessory buildings and accessory uses and structures. So what we've done is attempt to incorporate a set of customary accessory uses to the residence or to a business. As I mentioned earlier, in customary accessory uses to office, commercial, and industrial districts, that's where we have put into the segment on heavy truck parking to allow it as a use by right for company-owned fleet vehicles. But if you're going to do truck parking again as a principal use on its own for third parties, then you're going to have to follow section 331. And then here we have accessory retail uses within an office hotel. We had to eliminate some of the zone districts we're asking you to eliminate. And then accessory apartments was 313F. I have added in here accessory dwelling units as a definition of small self-contained living units having their own kitchen, bedroom, bathroom space. This is the backyard cottage or bungalow, the addition to an existing home with a separate kitchen. You might have it in an attic space. You might have it in a basement space. You might put it above a garage. I define those so that an attached accessory dwelling unit has very specific rules, whether it's internal to the house or detached from the house. And the detached units themselves still have to come before you for a special use permit. One of the other criteria we've added is that if you wish to have a special use permit for one of these, and you add the principal unit and the guest unit together, you still have to comply with the dwelling units per acre calculation for the zone district you're in. And that moves us into a more legitimate way of evaluating the smaller lots that may ask you for an accessory dwelling unit detached, which is going to require its own septic system. Its own use of a septic is going to require more land. And so you want this issue to be resolved before they ask. And this is the easiest way to say, look, if you're going to put 2 dwelling units on the property, do you have 2 dwelling units worth of acreage? And that's why we added that in there. That was kind of critical. And then the definitions, again, are all going out to Article 15 and residency requirements. So we've swapped a number of these things out of this section. And 314, which is no longer necessary, that is the one that was relating to medical issues. So if you had a accessory housing for family care, I'm eliminating that. You just have to come to us for a special use permit anyway for the second residence. There's no reason not to just provide that opportunity under 313 accessory uses. And so we're asking you to eliminate that. Let me jump down here real quick. Sorry for the look away so you don't get all squeamish on me rocketing down here to 318. 318 is where I've put traveler accommodations and short-term lodging. The hotel motel, the recreational vehicle parking areas, the bed and breakfasts and country inns, these were all scattered across various parts of the code. So what we've done is try to combine those components into short-term rentals, hotel motel. Restrictions and requirements are all here. In this short-term rental, we include tourist homes, which are Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO, guest houses, which may be accessory dwelling units to start with, but people want to rent those out on a short-term basis. There are some other components like youth hostels or dormitories, worker camps, and then rooming and boarding houses that would be included in this because they are also short-term. And then what you have to do in order to do it. These are special use permits. There's some licensing requirement for accessory short terms and temporary short terms to differentiate between the two so that you understand accessory short term is where a person owns the property and leases it out a portion, rents out rooms for the evening. It could be a VRBO or an Airbnb where you just rent a piece of the house. The temporary short-term rental is where you rent the whole house. And these are licensed for a maximum of 30-day rental nights and a maximum of 100 rental nights per year. And occupancy is limited to 2 guests per bedroom or a total of 10 guests in the house. So we have some additional requirements and allow code enforcement to be able to see very clearly what's going on. Also, there's some registration requirements. We've left the short-term traveler accommodation bed and breakfast in this section, which is where it was already. I just borrowed the article section from bed and breakfast to put all of these requirements and rules in for all the different types, and then brought the recreational and vacation camps, including RV and travel trailer parking areas, forward from, I think it's 344, and put it into this section here so the standards are in one place. That helps people at least go to the right section to look stuff up, and you don't have to fish through the rest of the code. I'm going to stop there and ask, that's a lot of information. I'm going to put it back on the presentation. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to breathe a little bit here because quite frankly, that's a lot to absorb, and I realize, but that's part of the reason why we are suggesting that we take a couple of months and allow folks to look at this material and make suggestions as to what needs to be changed or what you all might want to see tweaked. Because now you'll each get a 3-ring binder, obviously, so you can go through it on paper, but at least you know that you can, in fact, look it up online and have at your fingertips a printout of exactly what we're proposing anytime, any place. So with that, let me just sit here for a second, and you've got questions or major contentions that you want to bring up, or if you want to look at something specific.
Definitely, Phil, take some time, have some water. That was a lot to go through. Alicia, you might want to ask, I guess, if there's any questions from the P&Z board.
Yeah, I hope I didn't put everybody to sleep, because reading code can sure put you to sleep in a hurry.
That's a
Oh, you
lot.
did.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
May I speak, Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have, Rod, what I'm going to do is allow Commissioner Robinson to speak, and then Vice Chairman Fawcett, you can take over and allow your Planning and Zoning Board to speak. Vice Chairman Robinson, you have any comments?
Yeah, good time to break on that. But I followed the lot. No, but you're good. You're very good. What I do appreciate about planning and zoning, and Ron and James, is that this is the area in which these are presentations. Your logic line is perfect. It's dead on, and it is very in depth, but you make it look easy. The mind that it takes to frame this. And the way you just delivered this is well done, Phil. Well done. But again, I get it. The comprehension that it takes. But you made it. You prompted a couple of things, and obviously some of these things we have, as the Board of Commissioners, have faced even in this year's we'll say series of sessions dealing with planning and zoning. But what it sounds like, and again, I try to. And Ron, how much did this cost us with the match? Let me just back up for a second. Let everybody catch their breath. Just back up for a minute. Ron, how much does this the total grant?
Yes, Commissioner. So you may remember me coming before the Board of Commissioners, and when I, like I said, I started in January. There was a BIR in my budget for $25,000. That $25,000 was to upgrade the software for New World for the occupational license, so that people could do their business licenses online. So with this opportunity, when this opportunity presented itself and the CDAP grant opened up, I saw that I could utilize that money in a better way. I felt like only 1% of the population, or 1% of the 5,000 businesses that we actually had, would actually maybe use that software in the first year. And so I went to the Board of Commissioners and asked to reallocate the funding for the CDAP grant match, and which was granted. So that was the cost, Commissioner.
Yep. And the reason I bring that up is that counties will grow, counties will evolve, just like the universe expands. Right. And at a natural level is, how do we approach that? Right. How do we lay down a foundation or a blueprint to accommodate we're going to grow? And I remember when this grant came before us, this when you first came on board, and I was all behind it, because it's one of those like, okay, yes, it's all about planning. It's all about studying. The very thing that Phil brought up. It's all about like, okay, well, in the meantime, let's step back for a minute. Do we get the bigger picture? Right? And it's no more about handshakes or this how we do it. No, there's a more formalized approach. I love the thought leadership that comes out of the ARC and obviously Allison and all you guys. I was on a meeting yesterday with some of the derivatives for the ATL. It's just there's a higher level of thinking in approaching government, and I like intelligence, right? This just wakes me up. It's like, okay, now that's good. And again, I'm just buying time for my peers to catch up. But it's one of those where when I looked at this, it's like, okay, now I can get into this, because what you had was a code section that had evolved over time. Right, we're almost 20 years. 16 years. Right? It's been 16 years. And even before then, it really hadn't been overhauled perhaps like this, not with the latest standards and stuff. And so it's just one of those where, okay, our old way of things, it needs to change. Every now and then, you got to bring subject matter experts in here to change it, even temporal, or you add new people like Allison, right? And how to do business with Douglas. Like, really, it's so hard to do business with us. I mean, it's just, this, Madam Chair, is good.
Mm-hmm.
This is good for us, right? And so there are certain departments like economic development or like planning and zoning. I believe that when you put these little small spot investments, look at return on this. Right? And now people can come in. You made it so simple, and Phil, I'm telling you, like, man, you broke that thing down and made it so easy. And I know it's a team effort, guys. I'm taking nothing about it, but it's fact y'all put him up to do this. Nobody better than Phil could have pulled this to make something so complicated and make it attractive enough to like us. Okay, because I was like, oh my God, what they about to put me through? 8 hours or what? I mean, I'm just like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, but I'm acknowledging the fact that, okay, now this is gonna be useful. Now people can engage us. Now there's some logic behind our code, right? I mean, it's like, okay, now we're talking, guys. See, this is the forward thinking that I'm talking about. Like, you're bringing us something to say yes or no to. Now you're bringing us something similar to sort of like, okay, there you go. But you're thoughtful. It's not just for the moment. You're actually thinking for the future of how do people engage us and how do we respond. And so when I get questions about tree enforcement, things like that, now I can easily go there and stuff. And so now it's like, this is what we're talking about. And again, how long did this process take? Was this at 18 months or what, 12 months? How long did it take you to go from start to finish, Ron?
Yeah, yes, Commissioner. So let's see, the grant came out in 2018, came on board 2019. Yeah, about a year and about 18 months. Yeah.
Yeah, about 18 months. And again, to take all this and to the comments about all the studies that have been done, all the sticky notes, all the things, and then sit down and go through this exercise, guys, that you have to, give credit where credit is due. It's like, now this is a best practice. This is what I'm talking about, Madam Chair. That right there. And this is just a general conversation, but I won't get into the code. I mean, obviously we've got time for that. I'm just listening to your structure. I'm listening to your methodology and how you pull this together. I'm getting a feel for it. So I appreciate how y'all approach this. Meet with us ahead of time, meet before we met again. You're doing this right, because that would be a lot for us to sort of take in just one meeting and you're going to shotgun it. So even that approach, I mean, it was such a turnoff prior to you coming on. There's no indictment or anything. But Ron, I mean, it was just one of those where they would just throw stuff at us. And they just say, oh, they're killing us, right? And it's just, how would you keep up with this? And it was no thoughtfulness in how to even share the information. But the fact that you guys took time out and you had it was some sensitivity, like, okay, now how are we going to let them digest this? This is a big brontosaurus. How are we going to take this thing down and allow the commissioners to be engaged? And so I give you guys kudos for that. I mean, this again, there was nobody being glossed over, at least not in my place of residence. But this was good stuff, and I appreciate you guys know me about them signs and stuff. First Amendment, I get it and stuff. How do you deal with the First Amendment, right? In rooms and stuff. So kudos, Madam Chair. That's enough. I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I don't want to belabor the point. And I'm sure, like I said, I'll give my formal comments later at the time you ask for appropriateness. I yield the floor, Madam Chair. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn the floor over to our Vice Chair, Alicia Fawcett, to allow her to certainly chime in with your board to see if there are any questions. Vice Chairman Fawcett, you have the floor. I yield back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. At this time, are there any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board? Hearing that there are no questions from the Planning and Zoning Board, I turn it back over to you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, Board of Commissioners, are there any questions or comments regarding this massive body of work by our Planning and Zoning team? Well, I would like to add that I'm super impressed. Again, this has been a 16-year initiative, 14 years when you started in 2018. That was really a 14-year lag. And we are finally best practice. We are 21st century. This has been a lot of work. I'm really satisfied with the progress. And this has been a lot of hard work. And thank you so much, Phil Schaefer and the entire team, because I know your eyes are tired. It's a dissertation, really, what you have done. And you work in collaboration with the city, and you've come up with some great points. And also I like what you've done. You've actually gone in and you've addressed those things that are redundant. Made things that didn't make sense. You made those more palatable to housing. And then also, I just had one question, if I could just ask, and it's regarding the affordable housing. We talked about that. Can you talk a little more in depth? And I'm not sure if I need to just address this to Phil or you, Ron. We
Sure.
sent you an actual chart, and it looked at just at our opportunities. And we have I call it just a window of dollar-wise in terms of homes that we really are lagging behind, around that 200 to 400,000. What are your plans for those? I know you're saying affordable. Quality is very important to me, but I'm just saying, what do you have any plans? Have you looked at anything related to the 200 to 400 range?
Madam Chair, that actually is driven really by the developers and the economics. Well, what we have here and what you saw on the chart of the consolidation of the residential components really beefs it up a little bit. You know, we just don't have a lot of water sewer. So that's one thing that kind of drove, I guess, the back end of that discussion is like trying to really highlight where those water sewer opportunities are, and then, you know, get developers in and let them know that, hey, Douglas County is open for business, and here's some plans. Here's a PRD. Here's where we can incorporate a variety of housing, you know, that maybe for millennials, maybe for seniors, all in the same parcel. But the actual expense or what the economics would drive, I don't know what that would be. I know there's some studies that ARC has done, and that's something we probably could talk about and look into as a term in terms of what the average cost of houses are. I know Allison and I worked on she brought the 78 corridor study forward. It actually highlighted what those houses cost in the county. But yeah, we're cognizant and aware that it's only a matter of time. Right now, the developers are looking north of Atlanta. It's only a matter of time before they start looking west. And
Okay.
and I think that's going to be pivotal.
Okay. And basically what I was implying is that our residential portfolio is a little top heavy at the top with our less expensive homes. And we have probably about 17 homes, maybe just over $1 million. I mean, we want to see what we can do to beef up our portfolio for the future here in Douglas County. I know we lean in one way. So I was just wondering
Madam Chair.
what your plan was for the future. Any other questions from the board? Thank you so much, Ron. That was a great response. Commissioner Robinson, Commissioner Mitchell, if you're still on, and I believe Commissioner Carthen had to leave.
I'm still here, Madam Chair.
Oh, you
I
still
don't-
okay?
I'm still here.
Commissioner Carthen, you have any comments?
No, I think this is great. I'm looking forward to what this will bring as far as what Douglas County has to offer. I'm also, very excited about the signage. So I want to take a deeper dive at that because I know that will gain us a lot of opportunities where businesses now can, have the ability. And when I say businesses, I do mean small businesses because I'm a proponent of women in small businesses. Those small businesses to be able to, to have signage so that people can recognize that, that they exist. So I'm really excited about this. Thank you to the Planning and Zoning Board, Ron, and Phil, and our new
Allison, yeah.
Allison. I don't know why I want to say Ashley, but Allison.
What a team.
Yes, a great team. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Mitchell.
I'm not going to repeat all that's being said, though. However, just a great job. I'm looking forward to all of this. This should be really good on behalf of the county, and these guys have done a great job. I'm just looking forward to the completion, so I kind of look it all over myself and digest it. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Mitchell. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll yield back to you, Vice Chairman Fawcett. Do we have anything else?
This is the only item that we had on the agenda tonight, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So I guess point of order would be for Alicia to just close it out, I guess, with the P&Z board, and then pitch it over to you, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or
Thank you.
table to a date certain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We definitely want to table to the December 1st for this item to be taken up. And like I said, all this information.
Ron,
Yes, sir.
hey, Ron, is there a meeting between now and December 1st?
There is, Ken, but we have 9 items on that agenda. So
I'm just trying to decide whether recess is appropriate. It sounds like what's appropriate for this meeting is to table this agenda item until the December 1st meeting. Are you bringing up any more between now and December other than advertisements?
No, sir. We'd just be bringing these things forward, letting the BOC and the P&Z absorb what they've heard tonight, And we would then push for a P&Z vote, which would be followed by the BOC vote.
Okay.
Right, and just one
Gotcha.
quick clarification, we will also need to update the map. I'm not sure if that's relevant
right.
to the question, but if there's any guidance we need on updating the map, that will be something we will introduce in December because of the combination of the zoning districts and the introducing new districts.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, here's my suggestion then. Allison, if the P&Z board recommends tabling this item, the entire, everything that was presented tonight until the December 1st meeting, will the maps be updated and presented at the December 1st meeting, or will they be
Yes.
presented in November?
Yes, sir. They'll be presented at the December 1st meeting. We will take any feedback that we have on combining the districts, but once we combine those districts, we'll need to properly migrate everything over. And we've done an on-the-ground analysis of what's actually built in all of the areas we propose to change. And we will have all of that information ready, again, assuming the commissioners choose to go this route.
Okay.
Okay. My suggestion, Madam Vice Chair of P&Z, is to entertain a motion to table on your side as a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, then turn it over to the chairman to take up a similar motion to table the entire contents of today's meeting for the December 1st meeting at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
At this time, do we have a motion to table the entire contents of tonight's meeting until our December 1st meeting?
Madam Chair, this is Teresa Knowles. I make a motion to table the contents of tonight's meeting until the December 1st Planning and Zoning meeting.
This is Frank Payne. I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So at this time, we'll take the vote. When I call your name, please say yay or nay. At this time, Teresa Knowles,
Yay.
Brandon Penniman,
Yay.
Rob Thomas,
Yay.
Frank Payne,
Yay.
Kirk Nicholson,
Yay.
and I vote yay as well. We've taken a vote and it's been approved. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you so much, Vice Chair Fawcett. Board of Commissioners, do we have a motion to table the entire content of this meeting until December 1st? The December. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. When I call your name, please respond accordingly with your response. District 1 Commissioner Henry Mitchell III.
Yes.
District 2 Commissioner Kelly Robinson.
Affirmative.
District 3 Commissioner Terenia Carthen.
Yes.
And District 4 Commissioner is not here tonight. And Chairman, Board of Commissioners, Dr. Ramona Jackson Jones, yes, we have a 4-0 unanimous vote and the motion carries. So I yield back to you, Vice Chairman Fawcett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
If we have no further business this evening, are there any further comments or any business remaining for tonight's meeting? Hearing none, we'll move to conclude tonight's meeting, and I'll hand it back over to Madam Chairman.
Okay. Board of Commissioners, if there's no other business to come before this board this evening, we will, this is the conclusion of this meeting.